Hi and welcome to the rebuild of the Seiko 6218 weak data. We begin by installing the new mainspring into the mainspring barrel. The barrel walls have been greased with braking grease, the barrel arbor is lubricated and fitted, and the lid is fitted. The next step is to lubricate and install the second wheel or great wheel. We lubricate the upper shoulder and fit the second wheel bridge. This is retained by a single screw, and then in the case of this one there's an intermediate inset bridge which is jeweled for the fourth wheel. This likewise is held by a single screw. We then fit the mainspring barrel after lubricating the lower barrel arbor. The third wheel, the escape wheel, and after lubrication of the pivot and jewel, the fourth wheel. Next to be fitted is the plunger for the setting lever and the stop work or the hacking mechanism which bears against the fourth wheel. The difference between this and your conventional one which stops the balance is that this will stop the motion works via the train wheels bearing on the fourth wheel, but the balance will continue to swing briefly afterwards, although the watch will not run. We then fit the barrel and train bridge with a little bit of jiggling here to make sure the entire train is aligned. Although Seiko setups are all very similar in this regard, incorporating the entire barrel and train assembly, they do tend to go together very, very easily, which is good, it's handy. This is retained by 3 screws. The 2 that you see here and the third one directly opposite the mainspring barrel. Next to be fitted is the click and click spring combined. This is very, very similar to many, many other Seiko models. We then fit the ratchet wheel, remembering that this is dished and the dished side goes uppermost. After fitting the ratchet wheel screw, I use a piece of pegwood here to hold the ratchet wheel in place while I tighten that. We can then go ahead and fit the pallet fork and the pallet cock. The pallet cock on this one is a very convoluted shape. It's quite elaborate and much less simple than many others that you see, and it does require a little bit of jiggling to get the pallet fork pivot into place, and this is held by a single screw once in place. Once this is in place, the pallet stones are lubricated as has been explained in previous videos. And there and I'm just checking the action of the pallets with a small amount of wind on the mainspring barrel. About 1 full turn is the initial amount of wind I will put on a mainspring barrel of any watch I'm rebuilding, and what I'm looking for on fitting of the balance is an amplitude of around about 180 degrees. If everything's free and moving as it should be, 180 degrees is achievable on a single wind of the mainspring barrel. I also find it a very good way to check the general health of a movement's train of wheels. Here I'm fitting the setting lever and the setting lever spring, followed by the clutch, the yoke, and then the yoke spring, which is quite a large, sturdy spring in this case, and of the variety that will vanish before your very eyes if you don't have a good grip on it whilst fitting. As you can see, this one is resisting a little, but we do manage to get it all into place. The next part is a sort of secondary section of what would normally be the setting lever spring, because it has a retaining spring which holds the setting lever down, and then this section which has the catch for the setting lever motion when you pull the stem out to time set and day and date set. On the subject of day and date setting, the parts that are being fitted next are the quick day date star setting mechanism components. These consist of a bar with a star riveted in place, which switches between the day and the date wheel, and a secondary bar which holds that all in place, allowing it to pivot. The whole thing looks a little complicated when you first work on one of these, but the setup is quite simple overall. Here I'm adding lubrication to the pivot points and to the day date star wheel pivot. I'm using D5 if I remember correctly there. A little bit of cleanup of grease on the setting lever before inserting the stem and testing that. Next we reinstall the date change mechanism, which consists of a lower wheel and an upper wheel with a day change finger. And this is held in place by a single shouldered screw. And almost off screen there is some lubrication for the cannon pinion D5. And once this is snapped into place, we lubricate the post of the minute wheel and fit that, and then the minute wheel retaining plate. From this point on, unfortunately, I either neglected to film or I wasn't recording when I thought I was. So a while ago when I filmed this one, I'm doing the voiceover now, the fitting of the date and the day and date works and the associated jewelled plates that they ride on, so apologies for that. There you can just see I'm pointing out the intermediate setting wheel for the calendar works. Flicking back to the movement side here, we are installing the balance. And you can see that starting to swing away there. And you can see that's nice and healthy even prior to fitting the jewel in the balance. Here I'm just placing a couple of legs into place on the KIF Trio spring, the Dia-Shock spring, and using a shaped piece of pegwood, I'm rotating that into place to lock it in. At this point I'll add more wind to the mainspring barrel and wind that fully to allow it to run in. All of the jewels have been lubricated at this point, and the capped Diafix jewels were lubricated and fitted prior to refitting the plate. And here we see the assembled watch with its old versus new crystal fitted. Marked improvement on the old crystal, as you can see, which has a couple of bad scratches. And while the movement is cased up, we can go ahead and reassemble and then refit the automatic works. This is assembled by fitting the reduction wheel and the Paul lever after lubricating the pivot points, making sure that all engages, and then the retaining plate for the reduction wheel, which is specifically shaped and cannot be mistaken for a part to go anywhere else. This is held in place by a single screw, and similarly the retaining plate for the Paul levers, which is also held in place by a single screw. The circumference of the reduction wheel is lubricated with a tiny amount of 9010, and the jewel for the lower arbor of the reduction wheel is lubricated before the entire bridge is fitted into place. And once that locks down into place, a little rotation will test whether everything is meshing correctly, and if it turns the ratchet wheel. Once we've established this, the bridge can be screwed back into place with its retaining screws. Three of those, as you can see here. then a very small amount of D5 on a couple of the ball bearings, and using a piece of pegwood fitted into the centre, I'm just rotating that to spread the lubrication around, a little lubrication on the upper pivot of the reduction wheel, and then we can refit the oscillating weight and its retaining screw. The final thing to do is to let this run in, regulate the movement, and then refitting of new seals and casing everything up, or sealing everything up rather. And here you can see the watch ticking away, and just at midnight and in mid-day change, the date has already changed over at this point, and looking rather splendid with its new shiny crystal, if I say so myself. Lovely watch. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.